Hello, everyone, and welcome to EduMatch. Follow along with us at tinyurl.com/tweettalk68 if you want to see the video, as well as on Twitter with the hashtag EduMatch. Speaking of EduMatch, did you know that you could be the featured person of the day? So we have a little bit of a wait right now, but that's okay because we are plugging along and we are promoting people. So what we do is that we take your information that you supply us with and we tweet it out over the course of 24 hours to try to get you some international connections. So definitely join us there, and we would love to have you. So just wanted to give a huge shout out for today. Our questions are coming from Valerie Lewis. So thank you, Valerie, for your questions. Tonight, we're going to be talking about digital learning spaces. So definitely wanted to go ahead and get started with that. So first, we'll start things off with introductions. So Desiree, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Desiree Alexander. I am an instructional technology supervisor for Caddo Parish Public Schools, and I also am the founder and consultant for Educator Alexander.
All right, fantastic. Welcome back to the panel, and wanted to definitely welcome a first-time panelist on EduMatch, Ken. So if you could please introduce yourself.
Sure, my name is Ken Hull. I was a teacher for 25 years, and I am the coordinator of the online school in Fairfax County, which is the 10th largest school district in the United States. And I also help TES and Blendspace here in the U.S.
All right, fantastic, and welcome. Very happy to have you here. And last but certainly not least, let's welcome Rochelle.
Hi, I'm Rochelle from Pittsburgh. I teach Spanish and a STEAM course to students in 8th grade. I've been teaching at my current school near Pittsburgh for about 20 years. Really enjoy using technology. Looking forward to the conversation tonight because I think like a lot of what I've done, and it's interesting that Ken is going to talk about Blendspace TES because Blendspace is one of the top tools I started using. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. So thank you.
All right, fantastic. Very happy to have you here. So welcome to all three of you. Welcome to everyone who's tweeting with us and everyone who is watching at home. So we're going to go ahead and kick things off with the very first question. So we'll go again in that order. So the question relates to digital learning versus traditional methods of instruction. So what would be the pros and the cons of digital learning, if there are any? So we'll go first with Desiree.
Okay, the pros and cons of digital learning versus traditional learning. Of course, a pro digital learning, you can learn anywhere. It's a digital learning space. You can actually affect more students than just your classroom because you can actually collaborate with students all over the world. So, of course, blended learning has that taking down the classroom walls effect. And I would say a con to it is the digital divide. It is that, you know, some do not have the technology, do not have the Wi-Fi to actually compete or to actually participate in a true digital learning environment.
Okay, great, thanks. And what about you, Ken? What do you say?
First of all, I think you have to ask what's the best way for kids to learn and use technology to help that learning. It shouldn't just be you're going to use technology and just to do it for learning's sake. So it was just mentioned that collaboration is important. We can do that in the classroom, say in groups of 4, but then you can do it across schools, you can do it across subject matter, you can do it between periods, you can do it between kids on different days, which is amazing. You can have them go at their own pace, do different assignments that may be better for them. They can go online and find people that can help them. They can use resources from different teachers. I mean, the list is endless. So that, I mean, eventually, I know my county's working on, so a kid may be able to finish math in March, but they need more help in English, so they can use technology and the teacher to maybe double block for the rest of the year or take a couple classes online while the others are in a school. So it's fascinating that technology has allowed us, or isn't allowing us, to leave the industrial model where we're training managers to work in a factory, and we're going from class to class to now completely crush that model, hopefully going forward. And so, but I think one other thing that I hope I'm not taking too much time that was mentioned is the kids who don't have the technology. I think that the thing we also need to remember, I taught in a school that was very diverse and a lot of low-income kids, and I always told the kids, including my homeless kids, that we were going to use technology, and I was going to do whatever I could, be it stayed at lunch, have them come after school and come in my classroom to give them a laptop. I had a number of kids coming from Pakistan, India, Ethiopia, Eritrea, for example, who had never even used a laptop. And what we did is I said, you guys are going to do the work whenever we can at school, because if they didn't get it at school, they weren't going to get it at home like a lot of the other kids, and they would get further behind. So I think that using digitization in schools allows for the gap to close, not expand, as long as it's done usefully.
Absolutely, absolutely, definitely great information there. All right, Rochelle, what about you?
Well, I'm going to say ditto to everything that they both just said. Like Desiree talking about the learning anytime and any place. Definitely a pro for technology is that it does have so many possibilities for students to learn anywhere and at any time and in some place and in some format that's comfortable to them. And one of the concerns is that digital access. Do all students have the access to the technology and the tools when they need it? And that's when, the educators and the school system have to step in and see, like for me at the beginning of the year, I do a survey and I find out, what kind of technology my students have used, what they're familiar with, what they have access to at home, because I think that, that's part of my responsibility is setting up the classroom, the procedures as an educator, is to know the needs and the background where my students are coming from so that I can put things into place to meet what their needs are. And the technology, just using it for the sake of using it and saying like, oh, here's a computer without anything more, it doesn't mean anything. But I think the fact that you can use it to empower the students to find what they need to amplify their learning. And like Desiree said, it's knocking down the walls. And when students are learning and they're becoming more globally connected through technology, recent book that I read, you are flattening the walls of the classroom, and it does branch out beyond your individual classroom into your school and the community. And even if students aren't, fans of using the technology or don't necessarily make it their choice for a project, they're still learning about it because of their peers. They're seeing the capabilities, and they do have access to information when they need it, which it may not correlate with a traditional classroom setting and time, which is the nice thing of when you have blended or flipped learning, but students can learn at their own pace and their own place. So I think there are, obviously definitely pros and cons to it, but I think there are so many more pros to it. You just have to find out which ones are the most beneficial to you in your space.
Absolutely. So solid points made by the three of you on the very first question. Fantastic. All right. So the next question I'm going to ask, we're going to start first with Ken on this one. What platforms are highly recommended for digital learning and why? So would love to hear about your work with TES and with Blendspace.
Well, we can start with that one. TES, it's pronounced TES because it's English, even though it's spelled TES. If you're an English educator, if you're in England, everybody knows TES. I mean, they help teachers get jobs. They do in-services. I mean, they're the largest in-service company for teachers in England, and they've came here, I think, 2 years ago, and they bought up Blendspace in San Francisco. And Blendspace allows you to collaborate with other teachers and other students and to build resources. I'm just on there right now, so there are a number of things dealing with the election and tolerance, since obviously with the demonstrations that are going on and whatnot. And so clearly students have built resources for their classroom assignment on the election. And you can put videos in there, Google Drive documents, Word documents, you can do links. And it basically it looks like tic-tac-toe almost, where it's squares and you can move them around and make it as short or long as possible. But that's just one thing. I mean, Google Classroom, which is kind of a shell for Google Drive, is another one. You can share up to 1,000 with 1,000 other kids or educators, which is pretty powerful, as everybody's talking about collaboration. And you can use Classroom as a LMS, learning management system, or you can use Blackboard, or you can use Canvas or Moodle or any of the other ones out there for kids to turn in work, for kids to keep work from year to year. I mean, it blows me away that we can get away from books. We don't have to have textbooks. You can use Khan Academy, for example. My kids are ninth graders, and I was talking to someone who works for the College Board, and every AP class will have test questions with Khan Academy 2 years from now, just like they have for the SAT, to practice. And how cool is that? Or my kids are on Quizlet, started by someone who's, I think, 27 when he was in high school for his high school French class. And it's the most used site, educationally speaking, in the United States now, and it's going around the world, or remind.com, to remind kids to do an assignment. I mean, it's amazing how much we are slowly changing education.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Great resources, and I'm currently tweeting those out right now. Fantastic. So let's go next to Rochelle and then to Desiree.
Yeah, I'll follow up with what Ken was saying. You know, a couple of years ago, whenever I first started, I was using technology in my classroom, and I was just giving students some websites to try and personalize the instruction a little bit more, but I started to notice that there were some things missing, and I've termed it like a disconnect from the start. And it was bothering me that students might have questions later on in the evening, or if they were absent, they didn't know what they missed, and then they would appear, you know, like you're trying to teach, and they have questions which you want to answer, but they're right next to you, like, did I miss anything? You know, what did I miss when I was absent? And so I started to look into ways, and over the past couple of years, I've integrated more of these tools that do enable you to connect and communicate with the students. And you know, I have a top 5 list, and he's named a couple of them in a sense. My first thing I found was Sally, which is kind of like a remind, and that solved that disconnect. The students could ask questions. The next thing I went to was an LMS. It was Edmodo. I just happened to find it, tried it out little by little, and over the years, you know, added more into the classroom. The third one was Blendspace, and that one I thought was tremendous because prior to that, I was having students type in the website, and they couldn't tell if it was a capital I or an L or a 1, and I thought there has to be a better way. So I came across Blendspace, and I've used it the past couple of years for, you know, creating lessons, flipping lessons, blended learning, conferences, curating student work. There's so many possibilities you can do with tools like that. Wikispaces is another one that I've used with my students, but even things like he mentioned, Quizlet is another one that I've used with my students, and quizzes, talking about, you know, young people creating them. Those are creators who were in the early 20s trying to create this great tool, which has gained popularity. Padlet even is something that you can use for so many purposes too. New things come to me all the time, and I think there are so many things out there, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed, but you just either have to talk to somebody, or, you know, work with your PLN, or just look at your classroom and think, you know, what is one thing that I could have that might make a difference, and just go with that in that direction. But the most important thing I could say too when doing that is involve the students and ask them, you know, what do you think about this? And my students are really honest, and I do value their opinions, and you don't want to just use something because you think it's the greatest idea. Like, the important thing about these platforms is finding something that makes it work for you and your students. Both.
Absolutely. I love that student voice aspect to it, because they're the ones who are benefiting from it. They're the ones who are using it to learn. So absolutely, I totally agree. All right, let's go next to Desiree.
Okay, well, a lot of mine have been mentioned, but we do use Google Classroom a lot in my district, even though it's not a true LMS because you can't create content directly on it. For the LMS aspect, we do use Edmodo, and we love Edmodo, especially with the integration of Google Drive and Microsoft 365 with that. So we definitely love that you can kind of merge all of those resources together in Edmodo. And I don't know if you're seeing me or not right now. I'm not seeing my face on there. I'm seeing Ken.
We can see.
Okay, you can't see me? Okay, good. That's another one that's really big with me. We love Kahoot. That's one of the kind of where quizzes and, you know, doing that online quizzes. And another one we really love to use is EdPuzzle. And that's just doing the video quizzes. You can incorporate videos from all over. So there's so many tools out there to use. And like Ken said, Remind is always on the top of the list for texting. And then with the new chat feature, we can actually have office hours and have parents and students come to your office hours and have that back and forth is a really, really great tool.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I see that Rochelle had some more that she wanted to add.
Well, just to follow up, you know, you can think of so many possibilities, but as I just said about EdPuzzle, you know, we're talking about these, you know, ways that students can connect with you, with their peers, and collaborate and work through lessons. But then there's all these other tools that are out there, like EdPuzzle, where, you know, you can hold that accountability. And in years past, a lot of people did perceive blended or flipped learning as simply, okay, go home and watch this video, and then come back and we'll talk about it. However, we all know there's ways around that. You ask your friends, like, what was in the video, but things like EdPuzzle, PlayPosit is another one, even using things like Nearpod, GoFormative, where you can put things in, but the EdPuzzle where you can stop and have different questions, and it holds, you know, the accountability, and you can track their progress. And if you assign them to watch a video that you know is 5 minutes, and then you can see that they finished it in 4, and you're like, well, how exactly did that happen? But it's nice that you can take that time in the classroom when they're completing these things outside of the classroom. You can come back and you can, you know, build on that, move around, facilitate a little bit more. And one other thing I'll just add about the EdPuzzle, you know, you can have students be the creators, and that's something else that can really take it to another level. And you can learn about them. They can use one of those tools that are authentic to them. They can focus on the skills that they need to work on. And then what I've done in my own classroom is I've had them create those lessons, and then you have those for, you know, the next year, but also for that same year. If you find students who need some help in a certain area, and you have another student who created a project or on that same content, they can share. And so then the number of resources, you know, the authenticity of it is so much higher and better, and it's more meaningful because it's student created and it's created by students that are in the classroom, and it just fosters that whole classroom culture. So I think, I mean, we could talk forever, I think, about these topics, because there's so many great tools out there, and it just takes finding one to start with, and then just going from there and seeing where, you know, where the road takes you. It might not work out, but it's just a risk. You just have to take that step.
Absolutely, definitely. It's all about jumping in there feet first. So we are going to close on one more question I have for each of you. So what advice would you give to an educator who would like to begin using digital learning spaces? So we'll start first with Rochelle.
I was just taking a break from talking. No, I would say, and I think I kind of overlapped it with the previous question too, is, you know, just take a step back, or take that time to reflect at some point. You know, we have breaks coming up, different schools are on break, and think about how the year has been going so far, and are there any issues that you think, or even, you know, take a risk and ask your students to give you some information, and then think about, like, what's something, just one thing. That's all you have to do, is just start with one thing, try it out. And it might be a Quizlet, or it might be a Kahoot, or it might be having something like EdPuzzle, or using a thing like Remind, just to send those reminders, because students forget things and they need us beyond the classroom day. So I would say, you know, the best thing that you can do is to set an example of being the model, taking the risk, trying it out. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, that's great too, because it's still learning, and then you just figure out, where do I go from here?
Absolutely, definitely. So we're going to go next to Desiree.
One of the things I've learned and just doing research with digital learning spaces is that don't try to use every new tool that you've learned all at one time, because you're just going to overwhelm yourself. You're going to confuse your students. So pick one or two tools to start with. And like Rochelle said, getting that student feedback is really important. So get those 1 to 2 tools, start with those, see how you like it. Make sure that it's enhancing your learning, and you're not just using technology for technology's sake. That's what you don't want to do. So make sure that you are enhancing your learning with the 1 or 2 tools that you put into place. And then as you go, you can add other ones, but you don't want to add, you know, 5 to 8 tools that you learned at this conference all at the same time, because it can be overwhelming and you can take over what you're really trying to do, which is teach them the curriculum.
Absolutely. I love that focus on starting small and thinking big, and definitely. All right, let's go next to Ken.
I would pretend you're a student, because I think any good educator will always be a student. And I would go and Google top 10 educators to follow on Twitter or on Facebook. And I would, whatever's more comfortable for you, I would start following 3 or 5 or so of them and seeing what their suggestions are, and take the time to look at some of the sites, see the sites that fit you, try them with your students. Tell them that you're taking a risk, just like they're taking a risk with learning, and that it's okay to fail occasionally or not do well, and that's why we have mastery learning, to get second chances, to do things over, to improve yourself, and that you as a teacher are going to do the same, and you're going to try to improve the way you as a teacher lead them. And I think realize that it's taken years and years for most of the people that you're going to be following to learn everything they've learned, and so not to be too overwhelmed, and just as both the other people have said, do 2 or 3 things and become a master of it, and then try 2 or 3 more things.
Fantastic tips. Fantastic. Thank you so much to all of our panelists today. You all have definitely provided some awesome food for thought to everyone who is watching. So thank you to everyone who is watching and tweeting along, as well as to everyone who will catch us on the archive. So just wanted to give a reminder that the Twitter chat will be transcripted and it'll be put back out in about 9 minutes or so. In addition, the audio from this will be available as an iTunes podcast within the next few weeks. So next week we are taking a break, and the week after that is Thanksgiving weekend, so we're taking yet another break. So that's why we had a doubleheader today, to have 2 episodes to tide you over the break. So December 4th, we have Justin Schleider, who will be coming on to moderate about movement in the classroom. So definitely would love to see many of you on that. Anyone can be a panelist as long as you're an educator. Just sign up at tinyurl.com/EduMatch sign up. So just wanted to give a huge shout out to EdCamp New Jersey. Looking forward to getting to meet awesome educators in New Jersey this Saturday, this Saturday coming up. So everyone have a fantastic week, and let's keep connecting.